What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's going on with the overall market, what's going on with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, what you should be watching for in the economic calendar, and how things are looking in terms of technicals and other factors like that. But before I break into the devil's information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and the offer ends very soon. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with the market. So looking at SPY, this thing went parabolic on Friday, continuing to pump very, very nicely, and still looks bullish from a technical standpoint. So just looking at this thus far, we're approaching some tight resistance. I'll be talking about what that resistance is and how high this thing could actually go, especially tomorrow. I'm going to break down some important levels and such, but let me first go over some data just real quick. So just wanted to mention that we have the CB lending index coming out month over month for the month of December. It's going to be coming out tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 30 minutes after the market opens. Then at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions coming out. That could cause some volatility, but nothing too insane. I find all of this data to be very, very minor, nothing too crazy, nothing to cause like a massive move like something like CPI or PCE. So it's going to be very minor for tomorrow in terms of data. For the later days of the week, we do have some minor days, but I think Thursday and Friday become a lot more important since we have the GDP numbers coming out, not to mention PCE data coming out for Friday. You want to be very careful with this because the last time inflationary data came out, it was a little bit hot, so you just want to be careful, especially on Friday. Besides that, guys, let's be very careful with what the market does. For now, we're still holding up nicely, and the data is very minor to start off the week. Now, on top of this, when it comes to earnings, okay, for Monday, it's going to be very quiet. Before the market opens, we have the Bank of Hawaii announcing its earnings, very minor data. Shouldn't affect the market much or even to any extent, if anything. It shouldn't affect SPY or anything like that. Then we have United Airlines, not to mention Logitech and a couple of others, very minor data as well. But then I would say between Tuesday and Thursday, things become a lot more serious, with Wednesday becoming the most serious day because for Tuesday we have Netflix and Verizon, just a couple of others, some communications out there, and then we have consumer discretionaries coming out later. For Wednesday we have AT&T, and then we also have Tesla and IBM, the most important earnings in my opinion for the week. Then we have like Intel and Visa, a little bit bigger ones for Thursday as well. So these are going to be the most important days, especially Wednesday when Tesla announces its earnings. It's going to affect the whole market, in my opinion. Now, on top of this, when it comes to the way the market's looking, the fear and greed index, this has been updated. I just double checked this. So far, it's still at green on the higher side of greed. We're not at extreme greed just yet. So this opens more room for the market to push higher. We're not done quite yet. This suggests that although the market could be looked at as something that's overbought, there's still room for it to go higher, believe it or not. And that's because of so many different factors. Remember, the market is very manipulated. They like to just toy with retail, and they also like to just do what's most profitable for them. So that's very important to note. On top of this, the market momentum is still at extreme greed. We're not done yet. This has been at extreme greed for a very long time, so it's not really affecting the market yet. And then I also want to mention two more things. Number one, the puts and call options. This is at greed right now, but we're not at extreme greed yet. So we're still in a position where it could go a little bit higher. It's still possible for that to push higher. The market volatility on the VIX, it's been dropping. We're just barely above the 50 moving average on the daily time frame. So that's very important for the VIX. If we lose that, the VIX could turn more bearish, and actually that can be because of the market potentially pushing. Now, looking at the VIX, I'm going to start off with this before I break down SPY and the others. Looking at the chart, you could see that the VIX still has this gap down here, has a big gap down here. It's going to depend on how we end up reacting to the 50-day moving average. If we end up losing that, the VIX could sink a lot lower, all the way back down to 12.7. If we end up losing the current support, which is very close to where we currently are right now, so if we end up breaking down lower and this fills this gap down here, does kind of resemble like a head and shoulders, so it is possible the VIX is going to come lower. So that favors the bulls for the overall market, right? The bulls for SPY and the QQQ, this is favoring them so far. Looking at this chart, it is looking kind of bearish. If we hold the 50-day moving average and the VIX tries to bounce, then there's a chance the market would be causing that because of the market potentially seeing some downside. But right now, the VIX does favor the fact that SPY might push higher. That's what this is favoring so far, just looking at this chart. We haven't really filled this gap fully, and we're still on this downtrend right here, right? So now let's talk about SPY. What are some important levels and what is looking more probable? It's very simple. If we're bearish, let's just go over the possibilities just to be safe before I break down my prediction. So if you want to be bearish on this, you want to see this thing lose 481.3. If we lose this, 480 is coming next. That's going to be a critical support. If we lose 480, our next target could be around all the way down towards 478. So there could be a bigger drop if we lose this critical support at 480. So watch that very carefully. For resistance, you're going to be watching, I would say, very close to where we are right now. This is very close to about 482.75 to 483. If we break above this range up here, I think it could push all the way up to 485. I think that's going to be a very nice target, psychologically speaking, not to mention how much momentum is going to build up. 485 is going to be our next target if we end up breaking above this. That's going to be a very, very nice push. How does it look in my opinion? What is more probable? Are we going to fall? Are we going to push? Looking at the chart on SPY, the 4 hour is still looking very strong, a little bit overbought. So I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of like cool off a bit before we try to push up higher. But here's the big thing, there's something big is happening on the daily. So if we can push higher, check this out. We're about to get a bullish cross on the PPO right here, right? So if you look at the MACD, basically, on the daily, when we get these bullish crosses, we tend to push a little higher historically, right? Right here, we got the bullish cross. We pushed a little higher. SPY went from 443 all the way up to about 454. That was 10 points of pumping. We got this bullish crossover. SPY went from 425 all the way up to about 437. Right here, we got a bullish cross. SPY started this big rally. I got a bullish cross here and pushed higher. So we're very close. Check this out, guys. We're very, very close right here to a bullish crossover on the MACD. If we do get this, as the volume is going up, which looks pretty strong, there's no telling how much higher it could go, and there's no sign of it truly breaking down. So this is favoring the bulls a bit more. We're not even at a 70 RSI on the daily. It suggests this could go a little bit higher. As crazy as that sound, guys, like I know the market is crazy and manipulated, but I just have to be unbiased and honest. So we're forming a potential bullish wedge here. I would say that technically speaking, this favors the bulls a bit more. Could we kind of gap down first, but depending on how we open and then push up higher, it's always a possibility. But this is favoring, it's going to try to break 483 and start pushing to these higher levels I called out earlier. So it still looks bullish, it still favors the bulls. The QQQ is the exact same, basically. So it's making higher highs, higher lows. There's no sign of this breaking down. It also broke its all-time high again in the after hours. It is still very strong. If we break above 422.5, I think it's going to push up to 424 to 425, this range up here. If we end up losing 421 flat, uh, I would say that the next target is 420, and we have to try to hold this. If we lose 420, 418 is coming next. So those are your levels, basically. Lose 420, we turn a little bit more bearish. If we continue to hold above it and we start breaking above 422.5, a bigger push to the upside is coming. What do I think is going to play out? In my opinion, the chart is looking bullish again, right? Remember, the market is very manipulated. What goes up could always go higher. What goes down could always go lower as well. But in this case, here's why I'm saying this, because go back on the chart, you'll see something very interesting. Just look at the MACD. It's very simple. This is one of the reasons why. When you get this bullish cross, typically we push higher. This went from 363 to 380 in just a couple of days, right? After we got this bullish cross in the MACD. What about a tighter cross? We got a very tight cross here. It just barely happened. We went from 378 up to 388, basically. So it pushed up higher. Right here, we went from 323, we got a slight bullish cross. We slowly went up to about 328, so it pushed 5 points. And then what happened just on Friday? Check this out. The volume is going up. The volume is going up. And on top of that, the MACD just crossed bullish. This suggests with this very strong looking daily candlestick, it's going to push higher. It looks bullish to me, right? Same thing like SPY. So I know the market is so manipulated. I know the market has a correction potential coming in the future, especially as we approach March. But we're not ready to, fall just yet. It looks strong right now. It looks like this could push higher, technically speaking. So watch the levels I called out. This favors the bulls a bit more, just looking at the current charts. What about Tesla? This is going to be a big one for the week because Tesla has earnings on Wednesday. Tesla, to me, is showing some life because the reason for that is because, first and foremost, on the 4 hour time frame, Tesla has a a double bullish divergence. This is actually a triple bullish divergence on Tesla, and we have a bullish crossover on the MACD. It's still trying to hold. And when you look at the daily chart, daily has a potential reversal potential as we held above 207 and we managed to close above 212 because we have this nice wick right here, which is another liquidity grab, which oftentimes happens when they want to push Tesla up a little bit higher, right? We have a nice potential reversal candlestick. You can actually look right here. There have been days where it had these reversal candlesticks and it's slowly pushed higher. Um, this is another example. So this favors, right, potential to try to push up higher. There is potential for it. Now, what are some levels to watch for just to be safe? It's very simple. So if Tesla loses 212 tomorrow, hypothetically speaking, it's going to come all the way down to the 210 area. This is very minor support. It's not that strong. If we lose this 210 range, our next target is 207.5 to 208, around the 208 area, and we have to hold this. If we lose 208, we turn really bearish. We're going to come down to 205 and potentially 202 all over again. 205 is going to be your target if we end up losing the low we made from Friday. So, despite that, we have a bullish divergence that developed here. We have a nice volume coming in. If you actually look at the volume on Tesla, it's not that bad. And this is actually equal to this volume right here. So, there was a slight improvement in volume from these last couple of days. The volume is going up just a bit, and we have a potentially bullish daily candlestick, which suggests that it might attempt to push up higher. So we have this resistance right here at 214, 213.8 to 214. If we break this, I mean, it's going to push up to this imbalance at 216. And if we break above the 216s, it's going to push up to 220, in my opinion. We have a gap to fill up here at 220. So am I a mega Tesla bull right now? No. Am I a mega Tesla bear? No. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for earnings to play out to determine how this thing is going to move. But approaching earnings, sometimes Tesla does push a bit, so there is potential for it to push a little bit looking at the current technicals. So I think it might push a little bit higher. Make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. Watch this imbalance at 216 and watch and see if Tesla could get a little bit closer to 220. Generally and typically before earnings, Tesla does push a little bit, but earnings will determine the much bigger move. On Nvidia, it looks bullish. Plain and simple, it looks very strong. This thing is just uptrending and uptrending and uptrending. Watch support. Critical support is going to be around 590. If we lose that, it could come down to 487. And if we lose that, I would say our next target would be very close to 480. If we're bullish, however, you want to see it break and hold above 595. We have some tough resistance there. If it breaks this, 600, 602, and then 605 are coming. It's going to hit the 600s basically if we break 595, in my opinion. What do I think it's going to do? Based off technicals, it looks very strong. Very strong day on Friday. Could come down a bit and then start pushing up. Going to be looking for a push to 600 plus. It could even break into the 600s. Why? Because once again, we just keep getting some strong momentum. Buyers are stepping in, good volume. And on top of that, we had some good news about Meta buying up those very important graphics processors. So that's very, very good news for them. This is looking bullish overall, in my opinion. Now, for Apple had an unfilled gap. It hasn't finished filling its gap above, from what I remember. So there is potential for it to push up higher. There's definitely still potential for it. So in order for this to pan out, I'm going to be basically watching this. Apple has resistance at 192 and 192.5. That's where we have this unfilled gap up here. So if we break above 192.5, I think it's going to easily push up to 193.5. And if we get above that, 195 is basically coming. Apple is very tight. That's the reason why I call it very small levels on Apple. So, for instance, we have very, very tight ranges that develop. Also, this tends to happen like right here. We had a very, very tight ranges that developed for a couple of days before the next range, very tight range here before the next phase. It tends to move like that. But make sure you watch those resistance levels. For support, you're going to be watching basically 190. If that fails us, 188 is our next major target. And if we lose 188, we're going to turn bearish. There's 186.5, 185 coming next, and lower levels like that. What do I think Apple's going to do? Well, it's making higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. It could kind of gap down. I think it's going to gap down tomorrow. And then it's going to try pushing higher. And I think 192.5 is coming. It hasn't finished filling this gap. It could go a little bit higher. It might shop around the 192.5 range, but I think it could go a tiny bit higher. We're going to be watching it after that. So I'm not expecting it to like explode, but I think there's still bullish potential. I also want to mention that from a technical standpoint, this looks like one of those George W's, is what my friends oftentimes refer to this as. George W is forming a nice double bottom like formation. It's pushing up nicely. The full measured move would take it all the way up to 195, technically speaking. So there is upside potential. It favors the upside a little bit more. All right, that's it for the main five I typically go over. Now let's just go over a couple more charts very, very briefly. So SoFi, this could be affected by some banks. We have a potential reversal candlestick developing. We could be looking for a push back up if it manages to break above 7.65. Watch for a push for 7.85, then $8. We have a gap to fill around 7.7. So I think it could try to make its way up to 7.85. But this depends on if we could try to get above this resistance at the 5 EMA. So this does have potential to reverse. Looking at the daily candlestick, it looks bullish. Just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels. If we break down and lose supports, 7.2 is next, and 7. If it loses 7, a big drop is coming. So watch those supports. My guts tells me it favors the upside, though. For the Russell 2000, looks bullish. It's going to be testing 193.5 very soon. If that breaks, going to be looking for a bigger push to 195. But it looks more bullish on the daily time frame. For Microsoft, this thing is easily going to try to hit 400 in my opinion. We'll have to watch resistance there as we're entering new territory. We're going to likely test 400. If that breaks, I'm going to be watching the 402 area. I think it might push up for at least 400, so it looks kind of strong. For AMD, it looks bullish, especially thanks to the other technicals. Looks very strong on the daily, good volume. Might gap down towards 172, then push up towards 180 eventually. It could go a little bit higher. If we break 175, then 180 is our next target. I think it could push up a little bit more. As mentioned earlier, the VIX is looking bearish, very bearish looking daily candlestick. We have a gap to fill down below. This suggests more upside potential remains for the market. For the dollar index, we have a bearish looking daily candlestick, but it's kind of indecisive. It's trying to hold the 5 EMA. So if we lose 103.18, it's going to be sinking to 102.92. This is contracting a little bit, so it's looking a little bit more bearish, which suggests more upside potential for the markets. Coinbase is going to be heavily impacted by the news, but I see potential for it to get back up to 130 to 134. A little bounce is possible. It's going to be very minor. Google, in my opinion, looks very, very strong. Could push up for 150. I think 150 is a very good target, and we'll have to see how it reacts after that. For Amazon, this looks pretty strong. I think 157 is coming. Bullish looking daily candlestick. Might gap down, hit 154, then push up for 157. Looks kind of bullish. Meta looking pretty good right now. Meta looks like it has more upside potential. Higher highs and higher lows are continuing to be made. There's no sign of it losing or breaking down yet. So we're going to be looking for a push towards 385. If we get above that, there's 387 and 390. It looks bullish to me. With that being said, guys, that's pretty much it, at least for now. The market looks like it still has room to go up. Will the market get a correction? I think it will, but not yet. Okay, not yet. I think the charts are suggesting there's more room for the market to go higher. We might just see more upside. We might see shorts get squeezed for longer, but there is going to be a big correction. I think the market's preparing for the big correction. That's why it's pumping this hard. It's going to be coming later on. Okay, all right. So I would say as we approach March, it should be coming. But for now, the charts still look strong, so we're not ready for that phase. And there's a very good chance the market could go a little bit higher, at least for now. All right, that's it for this one. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and peace out.